welcome Penelope, Jagessar, Chaffer. We're going to have a little chat. Welcome. Big round of applause here. Penelope, if you haven't watched the TED Talk, you got to go and check it out because it was beautiful, and it was one of the things when I was sort of in the trenches of medicine and realizing that most doctors didn't realize that this was a thing. You know, seeing things like your TED Talk really, I think kept us all going. So, what are your thoughts on these new pronouncements by the OBGYN and the Endocrine Society as far as the whole movement of understanding toxins as playing a role in chronic pediatric and regular health?
Well, first of all, it has to be welcomed because they're a long time coming to the table. And I think that their endorsement really shows that we've reached a point where we have to start accepting the science. So I think that's great. The problem that I have is that it's a little late. And the interesting thing is that whilst we think things are getting better because we have the Endocrine Society coming to the table, and they're a great organization, I do a lot of work with them, the problem is that actually what the science is showing is that the problem is much more complicated and even worse in some cases than we think.
Can you give us an example of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Not too long ago, a study was published by a really interesting researcher, a Spanish researcher called Angel Nadal. He actually does a lot of work with diabetes, and he started looking at BPA, and what he found was that BPA triggers estrogen receptivity differently depending on where in the cell the estrogen receptor is. And estrogen receptors in the nucleus are triggered in a much more significant way than anywhere else. So in other words, it's almost as if it's a higher dosage of estrogen. Now that is mind-blowing when you think of the FDA, for example, regulating BPA in water containers and baby bottles and things like that. It's based on the current research that we have, which suggests that BPA isn't that estrogenic. It's not that bad an estrogen.
Yeah.
But it also is challenging because you ask the question, can you extrapolate that out to other chemicals that have endocrine disrupting abilities, like phthalates, for example? There's no reason to suggest that that may not also be the case. So what we're seeing, and there's also some really good research coming out that shows that the way that we've been looking at the metabolites of BPA has not been technically correct in terms of liver function. And so that suggests that it's actually a lot worse than it is. The other thing I want to mention really quickly is the idea of replacements. So we have this great awareness, and this is amazing. And then we have what I call the free movement, the free economic movement, BPA free. So BPA has got to be replaced with something because it's really awful. And everybody goes out and buys the replacement, but BPA is replaced with BPF or BPS, with the same bisphenol molecule.
Yeah.
And in fact, there's an A to Z of bisphenol molecules. You can get bisphenol Z, for example.
Yeah.
And so whilst we're thinking this is really great and the awareness is fantastic and we're taking all of this stuff out, what are we putting in to replace these things? Because the expectation as a consumer is that if you're going to give me something that still works in the same way, it's going to work in the same way. So you're taking stuff out, it still has to be the same thing. I mean, you mentioned Food Babe, Subway took the yoga mat chemical out, but Subway bread still behaves in the same way, still looks the same way, it still tastes the same way. So what did they replace that with?
Can't imagine. The smell is weird, isn't it? When you walk past a Subway, I was traveling in Europe with a friend who's from the South, and he's like, "Oh, I love that smell of Subway," and it's like, to me, it was the same as Bed Bath and Beyond. I feel like, one of the things that came out from the Endocrine Society that I thought was super interesting was this transgenerational. They're talking about transgenerational effects. So it's not just your effect on your endocrine system, but it's going to be, your kids and potentially your grandkids. And I see. Like the grandkids of people that we sprayed with Agent Orange in Vietnam. I mean, that is harrowing. What are we doing right now? I mean, what are we doing to my grandkids?
Well, this is absolutely the case, and I have to say that the medical community has known about transgenerational effects for a while. Thalidomide is a transgenerational effect, and if you look at a chemical compound called DES, diethylstilbestrol, widely administered in the US and Australia and the UK to prevent miscarriage during the 50s, 60s, and early 70s. The babies looked fine, so there wasn't an obvious defect like there was with thalidomide. What happened actually is that they started realizing that the second generation were developing really rare cancers. The girls were developing cancer, cancer of the vagina, which is extraordinarily rare, early in life, uterine cancer early in life, ovarian cancer early in life, which is quite unheard of. We're now seeing the third generation of these children, of the third generation from the original grandmothers who were exposed. And they're developing ovarian cancers at a younger age. We're now seeing teenagers, and no one is talking about this stuff. And the medical community was aware of that because they stopped prescribing it to pregnant women in the 1970s. It's not banned, and it's still used as a treatment for prostate cancer and other weird, I think it's also used in the cattle industry or something weird like that. But we've known about this, so we're very selective in where we cast our eye.
Yeah, it's very sad. So, will Penelope will be available for questions later on the panel. If you haven't watched the Toxic Baby video, I definitely watch it. This is relevant today, if not more relevant than any time before. Any seeds of hope on the horizon apart from these kind of things? I mean, do you see hope moving forward that we're going to see some change or some progress?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the thing is, one of the reasons why people have come to the table is because everyone's so sick. There's so much illness, and chronic disease for children has become so epidemic. And so I think that unfortunately the motivation to get a lot of people here isn't great, but the fact that people are coming to the table together is absolutely brilliant. And I think ultimately we force maybe is not the right word, but I think we encourage everyone to come on board. You know, the chemical industry, multi-billion dollar industry, has gotten away with a lot for a long time, and I think the accountability starts here.
Seems to me the biggest problem across hospitalists, insurance, pharma, chemical, whatever, is the fiduciary responsibility. Any CEO that comes in with a conscience is like, hey, I want to change this, you know, short-term shareholder gain goes down, he gets voted out, a new guy who's going to maximize profits. I mean, to me, that seems like a big hurdle.
Well, that's why you have to disrupt the stock market.
All right. Well, Penelope's thoughts on that coming later. Let's have a round of applause for Penelope. She'll be back later. It's an epic TED Talk. You got to check it out.
Thanks so much for watching, and for more great clips like this, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. I've created a special free video just for you called Harnessing the Power of Community in Your Practice, and it'll give you a clinical model, practical tools that double as marketing, and strategies to develop a community of your peers. All you have to do is click on the link below.